We don't need just a pretty face here, sweetheart. This is a real company, not your little hobby. That was the very first thing Nathan Cole said to me. I didn't know him, but I knew the type. Expensive suit, too much cologne, the smirk of a man who thought charm could replace competence. I didn't answer. I just looked at him for a second, then at the CEO's office door he had just walked out of. That's when it clicked. Nathan was the CEO's son, and apparently my new boss. My name is Jessie Carter. I'm 32 years old and I've been working at Verelia Systems for 6 years. I'm not a secretary. I'm not in PR. I'm the lead systems architect for the core AI framework that powers every single one of Verelia's flagship products. And for the record, I don't do hobbies. I design things that keep billion-dollar contracts alive. It was 8:15 a.m. on a Monday. First day for our new leadership team, as the email last week had called it. The old CEO had retired quietly, selling controlling interest to an investment group headed by Charles Cole, Nathan's father. Charles had been in finance for decades. Nathan, I learned from LinkedIn, had spent most of his adult life bouncing between short-lived startups, all bankrolled by his father. Not one of them had survived longer than 2 years. I was at my workstation reviewing error logs from the weekend stress tests when Nathan appeared. He leaned against the desk like he owned the place. Technically, maybe he did now. And dropped that pretty face line like we were in some bad 80s movie. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, I closed my laptop, slid it into my bag, and started packing up my personal things. The framed photo of my late brother, the coffee mug from the first AI conference I ever spoke at, the small fern that somehow survived the fluorescent hell of our office lighting. Nathan chuckled. Hey, don't take it personally. You'll do fine here if you keep smiling. I didn't bother looking at him, because while he was talking, my mind was already replaying a very specific conversation I'd had 3 years ago with my patent attorney. Most people don't realize how patents work inside a tech company. If you develop an invention on your own time, with your own resources, and you file the patent under your name, it's yours until you sign it over. That was the arrangement I had with Verelia. I would create core systems, license them internally until we formalized a transfer, then get compensated accordingly. It was in writing, in my contract. And right now, 6 pending patents, covering the adaptive AI engine, the predictive compression protocol, and the dynamic security layer, were still mine. Mine, not Verelia's, and certainly not Nathan's. I zipped my bag and walked past him toward the elevator. Hey, he called after me. Where are you going? We've got a team meeting in 20 minutes. I pressed the elevator button. No, Nathan, I said without turning around. You have a meeting. I have something else to take care of. His laugh followed me into the elevator, short, dismissive, the kind that assumes you'll come back crawling. By the time I reached my apartment, the rain had started. Seattle in October, the perfect weather for thinking. I brewed coffee and laid out my laptop on the kitchen counter, pulling up my cloud storage. All 6 patent portfolios were stored on my personal servers, hosted completely outside of Verelia's infrastructure. The licensing agreements were due for renewal in exactly 9 days. I didn't plan to renew, not without a conversation. The next morning, I came in early. Most of the office was still dark, but from the corner conference room, I saw Nathan pacing with 2 other men I didn't recognize. On the table between them was a stack of glossy presentation folders, launch materials, the big launch. We'd been working toward it for 18 months. Project Atlas, an AI-driven analytics platform that could process and visualize live data streams in seconds. The kind of product that, if successful, would cement Verelia as an industry leader for the next decade. Atlas didn't just use my technology. It was my technology. The adaptive AI engine was its beating heart. Without it, the platform was little more than a pretty dashboard with no brain. At 10 a.m., Charles Cole himself arrived. Tall silver hair, expensive watch. Nathan hovered at his shoulder like an eager apprentice. Charles introduced him as the new strategic operations lead to the entire staff, emphasizing his vision for modernization. I stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, and listened. Nathan talked about streamlining, removing redundancy, and prioritizing the right talent. I noticed his eyes flick toward me when he said that last part. That was the moment I knew. They weren't just here to lead. They were here to replace. And if they thought they could take my work without paying for it, they were in for a very public education in how patents, contracts, and consequences worked. That night, I got a call from someone in the development team. "You didn't hear this from me," they whispered, "but Nathan's been asking the engineers to document everything about your AI engine. Full architecture diagrams, source code, the works. Says it's for knowledge sharing." My fingers tightened on the phone. I'd seen this playbook before. This wasn't knowledge sharing. This was asset capture. And if Nathan thought I was just going to sit quietly and let it happen, he was about to find out how wrong he was. Because I already had a plan. And it started with walking out of that building with my entire patent portfolio in my bag. The next morning, the office felt different. It wasn't that people were acting strangely. They weren't. But there was a new undercurrent, a subtle shift in posture and tone. Conversations that used to pause when I walked by now continued, but quieter, like they were about something I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd been in corporate long enough to recognize the signs. Someone, somewhere, had decided my role was under review. At 8:12 a.m., I opened my inbox to find 3 meeting invites I'd never received before, all for Project Atlas documentation review. The organizer? Nathan. The attendees? Senior engineers, 2 new consultants I didn't know, and not a single member of the legal or patent team. That was my first hook of the day. The second came 10 minutes later when I got a Slack message from one of the junior developers. "Jesse, did you approve giving the consultants full repo access? They're downloading the entire AI framework." I typed back, "No. Who authorized it?" The reply was immediate. "Nathan said it was cleared by you, but it's not, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. From my desk, I could see Nathan in the glass-walled conference room. He was leaning back in a chair, arms spread like a king surveying his court, while 2 engineers projected my framework's architecture diagrams onto the wall. That wasn't documentation review. That was a blueprint theft in broad daylight. I forced myself to stay calm. I knew something they didn't. Without the licensing agreement, the code might as well be an empty shell. The patents were mine until signed over, and right now that contract was sitting unsigned in my apartment drawer. Still, this meant my timeline had just changed. If they were moving now, I had to move faster. At 10:30 a.m., Nathan appeared at my desk, holding a coffee he clearly didn't make himself. "Morning, Jesse. Just wanted to let you know we're working on streamlining Atlas for launch, making sure everyone's aligned." I kept typing. "Is that what you call giving external consultants unrestricted access to proprietary code?" His smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. "Transparency builds trust." I met his gaze. "And theft builds lawsuits." For a fraction of a second, he froze. Then he laughed, low and dismissive. "Relax, sweetheart. No one's stealing from you. It's all company property." I didn't bother reminding him that wasn't true. Not yet. I just saved my work, closed my laptop, and said, "If you're that confident, I'm sure you won't mind me double-checking with legal." The flash of irritation across his face was all the confirmation I needed. That afternoon, I called Mark Ellison, Verelia's in-house counsel, from a quiet corner of the lobby. I didn't trust company lines anymore. "Jesse, I can't say much," Mark said carefully, "but I'd advise you to make sure you have every piece of documentation about when and how you developed your patents. If they try to claim derivation from company resources, it could get messy." "They're already trying," I said. Silence on the line for a beat. "Then you should know something. Charles has been telling the board that Atlas's core tech is now fully internalized. That's a very specific phrase in contract law. Meaning? Meaning he's implying they own it, even if they don't. And that makes your position precarious." When I hung up, my stomach felt like it had dropped through the floor. They weren't just stealing the code. They were laying the groundwork to make it look legal. That night, I stayed in the office later than usual. The cleaners came and went. The lights in the conference rooms went dark. By midnight, it was just me and the hum of the servers. I connected my personal laptop to my secure cloud, running through every line of code in my portfolio. I tagged each file with metadata: creation date, device ID, and version control history. Everything was logged, time-stamped, and backed up in 3 separate offsite servers, 2 in the US, 1 overseas. If they tried to argue I'd built it on company time, I could prove otherwise. At 1:14 a.m., I sent an encrypted message to my patent attorney, Rachel Myers, with the subject line: acceleration required. Rachel, we need to move up the enforcement window. They've begun copying internal architecture diagrams and source code. Confirming derivation claims are imminent. Recommend preparing cease and desist language with immediate effect. We'll update in 24 hours. When I finally left, the rain had stopped. The streets were empty, the air cold enough to bite. My car windows were fogged over, and as I sat there waiting for the defrost to kick in, I thought about Nathan's smirk that morning. He thought I was just a pretty face who'd roll over when the real players showed up. He was about to learn that the real players don't raise their voice. They don't make threats. They just make sure the other side never sees the hit coming. And in exactly 7 days, the Atlas launch would be live streamed to investors, clients, and press worldwide. I planned to let them get right up to that moment before they found out what I'd done. By Wednesday morning, word was out. Atlas would launch the following Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. The announcement went out in an all-staff email from Charles Cole himself, full of buzzwords like market disruption, strategic advantage, and visionary leadership. Nathan's name appeared 3 times in the message. Mine didn't appear once. At 8:45 a.m., I walked into the office kitchen for coffee and overheard 2 of the engineers talking. They're saying the new AI engine can handle triple the concurrent load of the old version, one whispered. I didn't say anything, but my hands tightened on the coffee pot. There was no new AI engine. There was my engine, which they'd been scrambling to map out piece by piece. Any triple capacity claim was either marketing spin or pure fantasy. At 10 a.m., I got a meeting invite titled Pre-Launch Technical Briefing. The attendees included the board, Charles, Nathan, and the new consultants. My gut told me this wasn't a normal briefing. It was a control grab. When I arrived, Nathan was already at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up like he'd just come from solving the world's problems. He clicked through slides full of colorful graphs and bullet points. This, he said, pointing to a performance chart, is the future of Atlas. I recognized the chart instantly. It was based on my original benchmark tests from months ago, before they'd even begun modifying the system. Nathan's eyes flicked toward me for just a second. He knew I recognized it. Charles leaned forward. Jesse, I understand you've been involved in Atlas from the beginning. Any concerns about the launch? I met his gaze. Only that the benchmarks you're showing here are from a different version than the one currently being built. The room went quiet for a second too long. Nathan laughed it off. Jessie's just being cautious. She's protective of her work. And that's a good thing. I didn't push further. Not here. Not yet. That afternoon, I got a call from Rachel, my patent attorney. They filed a motion to clarify ownership of the AI engine, she said. It's not a lawsuit yet, but it's a signal. Meaning they're hoping I'll cave? Exactly. They're betting you'll hand over the patents to avoid a fight before launch. My advice? Don't respond until we deliver the cease and desist. When can we send it? Monday morning, 10 a.m. That's early enough to create panic. Late enough they can't pivot before Tuesday's launch. That night, I stayed late again. Not to change the code, but to audit it. Every instance of my patented algorithms was still embedded in the Atlas build. Without them, the authentication layer would revert to basic username password verification. Technically, they could still launch like that. But it would be like leaving the front door unlocked in a bad neighborhood and then broadcasting the address on live television. On Thursday, Nathan called me into his office. Look, he said, pretending to be casual. I know we got off on the wrong foot. You're smart, you're valuable, but this is a new era and the way we do things is changing. Changing how? For starters, we need to think bigger, and that means making sure Atlas belongs to Varelia, not any one person. I folded my arms. So this is the part where you tell me to sign over my patents. His smile widened. It's just paperwork. You'll be compensated. I kept my voice level. Send it to my lawyer. By Friday, the consultants were working around the clock, combing through every piece of documentation I'd ever written. I watched them out of the corner of my eye, knowing they still didn't understand the one thing that mattered. The core authentication framework wasn't physically housed on Varelia's servers. It was on mine. Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from one of the junior engineers. Nathan just told the board Atlas is independent of your tech now. He's lying. The build still calls your framework 326 times on login. That was the third hook. Nathan wasn't just arrogant. He was reckless. If they launched with my tech without a licensing agreement in place, it wasn't a gray area anymore. It was textbook patent infringement. On Sunday, I drove to Rachel's office with a hard drive containing every version of the AI engine, all metadata intact. We went over the cease and desist one last time, line by line. Once this is served, she said, you have to be ready for immediate retaliation. They'll accuse you of sabotage, theft, whatever they can throw at you. Let them, I said. The truth's on my side. Rachel slid the envelope across the table. Then we're ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the rain, thinking about the faces I'd see in the office tomorrow morning when the courier walked in with that envelope. Nathan would smirk, then panic. Charles would go straight to damage control. And everyone else? They'd wonder how the launch could possibly go wrong. I closed my eyes and pictured Tuesday at 9 a.m. The stage, the cameras, the investors in their suits, and the moment they tried to log into Atlas, only to find the door locked, the lights out, and the keys in my pocket. At 9:57 a.m., Monday, I was in my chair with my laptop open, cursor blinking over an email draft I'd been rereading for 20 minutes. The subject line was simple. Notice of license termination, Atlas authentication components. It had 3 attachments: the signed cease and desist from Rachel, the exhibit list of my patents, and the prior internal license letters that proved Varelia had always treated my tech as licensed, not owned. At 10 a.m. sharp, the courier stepped out of the elevator and walked straight to reception. From my desk, I watched the envelope get passed to Charles's assistant, then to Mark Ellison from legal. Within a minute, I saw Mark moving quickly toward the executive suite. Less than 2 minutes later, my phone lit up. Incoming call. Private number. I let it ring out. A Slack pinged. Then another. Then an email from Office of the CEO. Conference room A, now. I took a breath, slid my phone into the drawer, and walked. Charles was standing at the end of the table when I entered, the envelope open, pages spread like a fan. Nathan had that fixed grin people wear when they think they're still in control. Mark sat off to the side, legal pad ready, face neutral. Charles didn't waste time. Jesse, what is this? It's notice you're not authorized to use my patented components in Atlas, I said. I kept my voice even. The license expired. Renewal was never executed. You've continued using the tech without permission. Nathan laughed. Your tech? It's company tech. Mark cleared his throat. To be precise, portions of the framework are covered by pending and issued patents filed under Ms. Carter's name. Historically, we've used internal licenses pending transfer. Historically? Charles snapped. We own the company. We own the code. Ownership of code and ownership of patent rights are not the same thing, Mark said quietly. This notice triggers certain obligations. Nathan rolled his eyes. Obligations like stopping use, I said. Immediately. Charles slid a fresh document across the table. Then sign this transfer now and we're done. I didn't touch it. Send it to my attorney. He leaned in. There's a launch in 24 hours. If you push this, you'll destroy everything we've built. You're free to rebuild an authentication layer that doesn't infringe my claims, I said. You cannot use mine without a license. Nathan's grin cracked. This is blackmail. It's called contract enforcement, Mark said. Charles turned to me, voice dropping half an octave. You walk out with those patents and we will pursue you for theft of company IP. I kept my hands on the chair back so he wouldn't see them shake. Everything was developed off-site, on my equipment. You have my logs, purchase receipts, the version control history. You've had them for years. Silence. Then Charles exhaled through his nose. Get out, he said. We'll handle this. I walked back to my desk. I didn't pack this time. I documented. At 10:42 a.m., I sent a single statement email to legal and the executive team. Per attached C&D, effective immediately, I am revoking access to all remote endpoints, keys, and services that implement claims in the attached patents. This action is limited to my property and does not alter or access any Verelia asset. I will maintain full forensic logs. 2 clicks. Rotate primary API keys, disable legacy fallback token, revoke the Atlas service account on my gateway. It took 41 seconds. The system continued running on cached sessions. No active user was kicked. If they stopped touching my endpoints, nothing would break. Yet. By 11:15 a.m., Slack went loud. Engineers, who changed the auth gateway? Why are we getting 401s on stage cluster? Did we cut over to the new provider? Its security DM'd me. We're running an emergency audit. Please bring in all company devices. I replied, happy to. I don't have any company devices at home. My personal equipment is not subject to audit. 2 minutes later, HR emailed me a PDF titled Updated Employment Agreement, IP and Device Policy. Timestamp, 11:23 a.m. New language. Retroactive language. I replied, CCing Mark and Rachel. I will not sign retroactive policy. Please address counsel to counsel. At 12:05 p.m., Nathan appeared at my desk with a security supervisor I'd never met. We need your laptop, he said. This is my personal machine, I said. Here's my signed device waiver from onboarding. I handed the form across. He snatched it, skimmed, and handed it to the supervisor with a grimace. We're putting you on administrative leave, he said. Hand over your badge. I set the badge on the desk. I'll await written confirmation and next steps from legal. He expected a scene. I gave him a paper trail. As they walked away, my phone buzzed with a message from a junior engineer. Stage can log in if we recycle sessions. Prod is fine, for now. That was the keyword. For now. The cache window would expire. I knew their refresh cadence. I'd helped design it. At 1:40 p.m., Mark called from his office. For once, his voice sounded human. They're going to accuse you of sabotage. Don't say anything on company channels. Let Rachel speak. Understood. Also, he added, between us, they should not launch without a non-infringing auth layer. If they do, they're inviting regulators, not just you. Will you put that in writing? A pause. I will document my advice. By 3 p.m., PR sent an all-staff. Atlas launch, full steam ahead. The message insisted everything was on track. A calendar invite followed for 5:30 p.m. War room, final readiness. I wasn't invited. I went home. At my kitchen table, I opened my audit dashboard. Every request to my gateway was now logged with full headers, timestamps, originating IPs. I wasn't touching their systems. I was watching my own. Legitimate, boring, unassailable. At 6:12 p.m., a new client ID pinged my gateway, one I didn't recognize. It tried to authenticate 6 times in 20 seconds, failed, then vanished. 3 minutes later, another. Someone was brute probing the edges, hoping I'd left a door cracked open. I forwarded the log to Rachel with a single line. Attempted unauthorized access to my property following notice. She replied 1 minute later. Good. Keep logging. Do not engage. The night wore on in pings and quiet. At 9:03 p.m., a message from an engineer I trusted. They're swapping in a temporary auth. It passes smoke tests, but chokes on concurrent refresh. Nathan says we're fine. How many users can it handle? I wrote. We got to 38. Atlas's demo would put hundreds on it at once. I slept badly, that nervous half-sleep where your mind keeps running scripts. Twice I sat up convinced I'd forgotten something, then lay back down when I remembered the checklist and the backups and the letters in triplicate. I'd done this by the book. They were the ones sprinting into traffic. Tuesday, 5:42 a.m. My alarm. I made coffee stronger than necessary and opened the stream announcement. 9 a.m. Pacific. Investor list visible in the RSVP banner. Tech press already tweeting about the AI moment. The War Room calendar showed a 7 a.m. status call. I wasn't on it, but someone forwarded me the agenda anyway. 7 a.m. smoke test. 7:30 a.m. load test. Limited. 8 a.m. green, red, go. 8:30 a.m. PR brief. 9 a.m. live. At 7:06 a.m., my phone lit up with a thread from the engineer. We passed smoke. Load test skipped. Nathan says optics. I stared at the screen. Skipped. Because load tests could tank confidence. Because reality was negotiable if the slide looked good. At 8:11 a.m., I received an email from Charles directly. Last chance. It was one sentence. Sign the transfer and we'll make you whole. No numbers, no terms, just trust me from a man who had tried to slip retroactive policy under my door. I replied with the same sentence Rachel had taught me on day 1. Please direct all communications to my counsel. At 8:27 a.m., I stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out to my car. I didn't need to be anywhere specific. I needed to not be there. I drove to a quiet lot 2 blocks from the office, the kind where delivery trucks nap between runs. Rain ticked on the windshield. The city moved around me like it always had, indifferent. I opened my laptop and pulled up the stream. The stage was minimalist. A big LED wall with the Atlas logo, a demo station, 2 stools. Charles appeared first, measured and smooth. He entered the problem, the market, the vision. Then he smiled toward the wings. And to show you the future, here's Nathan Cole. I watched him cross the stage, confident, hands open, voice warm. He spoke about speed and trust and scale. He invited the audience to pull out their phones, scan the QR code, and experience Atlas live. A QR shimmered on the screen. I glanced at the clock. 8:59 a.m. In my audit window, connections started to bloom. Guest accounts, conference Wi-Fi pools, carriers. Not to my gateway, to theirs. I closed my eyes for a second and breathed. In 1 minute, the test would become traffic. In 1 minute, marketing would meet math. I set the coffee down, steadied the laptop on my knees, and watched the counter tick. 9 a.m. At 9 a.m., the counter spiked. My audit window lit up like a Christmas tree. Hundreds of concurrent login attempts funneled into the Atlas endpoint. For the first 3 seconds, everything looked stable. Then, at 9:03 a.m., the red bars started appearing. Failed authentication. Token refresh timeout. The refresh bottleneck I'd been warned about was kicking in. By 9:05 a.m., over half the sessions were returning error messages. I switched to the live stream. Nathan was still on stage, beaming, walking the crowd through the features on the big LED screen. On the right-hand side, a live feed showed user dashboards loading in real time. Only now those dashboards were freezing. A murmur rippled through the audience. Someone's phone in the front row buzzed. They glanced at it, frowned. On the big screen, a spinning wheel replaced the interactive map. Nathan noticed. I saw it in the quick flick of his eyes, but kept talking. By 9:07 a.m., the failures were unavoidable. The spinning wheel gave way to red banners, Error, unable to connect to authentication server. It wasn't just the demo accounts, it was everyone. Nathan's smile faltered for half a second before he turned toward the wings. Off camera, someone was frantically waving. He chuckled into the mic, voice pitched too high. Looks like we've got some live launch jitters. The team is on it. Let's give them a round of applause. The applause was thin. Back in my audit logs, the requests were stacking up and failing instantly. Their temporary authentication layer simply couldn't handle the load. And because they'd ripped out the caching bridge that had bought them a few days of breathing room, there was no safety net. At 9:12 a.m., the live stream cut away from the failing demo screen and switched to a promotional video. Glossy stock footage of diverse teams smiling over laptops. A Band-Aid on a severed artery. From where I sat in the parking lot, I could picture the scene in the war room. Consultants shouting over each other, engineers hammering keyboards, Charles demanding someone fix it now. I knew the truth. They couldn't fix it now. Not without my framework. Not in the middle of a live launch. At 9:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. This time I picked up. It was Charles, his voice tight. Jesse, what would it take to get this back up? Right now. License agreement, I said. Signed with payment terms. That's not realistic. Neither is launching without infrastructure. He swore quietly. We'll call you back. He didn't. By 9:30 a.m., they cut the stream entirely. The press release that had been queued up for a successful launch of Atlas was deleted from the corporate site. Tech journalists on Twitter were already posting screenshots of the errors. One headline appeared before I even closed my audit window. Verelia Atlas launch fails live. Authentication meltdown. I drove home. The rain had started again, fine and cold. My phone was a constant buzz of calls, texts, emails. I ignored all of them except Rachel's. Damage control mode, she said as soon as I answered. They're trying to spin this as unexpected server outage. Doesn't change the fact they violated your patents. The paper trail is clear. You're in a strong position. How strong? Strong enough to negotiate terms before they even think about court. By Wednesday, the board had called an emergency meeting. Nathan was quietly removed from any public-facing role. By Friday, his LinkedIn profile listed him as exploring new opportunities. Charles released a statement about leadership realignment and unexpected technical challenges. 3 of Verelia's largest clients canceled their contracts. The stock dropped 37% in 4 days. And according to one of my contacts in engineering, the consultants brought in to save Atlas walked after realizing the rebuild would take 6 to 9 months. The following Monday, Charles himself called me. This time, there was no tight control in his voice, just exhaustion. We're prepared to discuss licensing terms, he said. Exclusivity, purchase of patents, whatever it takes. Rachel handled the rest. By Thursday, the agreement was signed. The number they wired to my account was more than I'd made in 6 years at Verelia. In exchange, they got a 3-year non-exclusive license to my tech, just long enough to survive the rebuild without going under completely. I didn't go back to the office. I didn't even keep in touch with the people I liked there. I spent 2 weeks decompressing, then started sketching out something new. By January, I'd incorporated my own company, Aegis Logic, specializing in secure, adaptive authentication systems. Within 6 months, we had contracts with 2 of Verelia's competitors. Verelia? They limped along for a while. When the 3-year license ran out, they tried to build their own system from scratch. It never matched the performance or security of my original framework. Eventually, they were acquired for a fraction of their former valuation. Charles retired quietly. Nathan disappeared from the tech world entirely. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not giving them the patents earlier, avoiding all the mess. I tell them the truth. If someone shows you they don't respect you, they won't respect your work either. And in tech, in any field, your work is your leverage. The day I walked out with my portfolio in my bag, Nathan thought he'd humiliated me. But that's the thing about people who underestimate you. They rarely look back until it's too late to change the ending. And this ending? This one was mine.